dynamic interview or podcast interview with Dr. Tahima Dorsey on DTD's Multisport, Urban Multisport podcast radio show. But today I'm doubling up, not as just the host of the podcast, but also president of the Randallstown NAACP. And I have a wonderful guest that I get to work with very closely all the times, not just in the community, but also in our NAACP. And I would like for her to take a time and go ahead and introduce herself.
Thank you. My name is Ingrid Sabio-McLaughlin. I'm an associate professor of history and women and gender studies at the Community College of Baltimore County. I'm also currently serving as the education committee chair for the Randallstown NAACP.
Yeah, and so it's exciting, Professor McLaughlin, to have you on here, not just a part of our leadership team on the executive committee for our unit 7032B, but also for this important initiative that we have coming up. And for most that may not be familiar, Project 2025 was on the ballots. We needed this is what our current president ran on, not just him, but all Republicans for the election we recently held, just in 2024. In Project 2025, we're actually beginning to see roll out right now Live Not Memorex. And from day one, it has had a huge impact, not just on, minorities, but, also on all people. And even for those that voted for Project 2025, I don't think that they realize what that magnitude would be. And now here we are in the 8th month of this new administration. And it's like we've gone back several centuries. And before we dive into this discussion, Project 2025, again, was on the ballots in 2024. Republicans won. The current president is a Republican. They're rolling it out. The NAACP has what's called our Project 2025, which is a fight against Project 2025. And Project 2025 is a policy proposal that seeks to undermine our progress, dismantle democracy, and take us back to a time when we did not have a vote or a voice. And if you've been paying attention, even just a little bit, that voice for most Americans have been eliminated or dwindled over the last 8 months. The overarching goal of the project is to gut the administrative state from within, and is incredibly harmful to the Black community, but also to Latina and any other minority population. And Project 2025 covers four sections: the policy agenda, which provide detailed conservative policy recommendations for every major issue, aiming to guide the next administration in reshaping federal policies in a direction hostile to the interests of equity, equality, and Black progress. Then Section 2 is a personal database that builds on a network of far-right extremists to fill positions within the next conservative administration, ensuring that their operatives are in place to enact harmful government policy. Section 3 is the Presidential Administration Academy, where this is where they appoint political appointees and train them for the future, equipping them with the skills necessary to weaponize government roles across the American people. I think we're kind of seeing some of that now. And the last section of Project 2025 is the 180-day playbook. And this outlined actions to be taken in the first 180 days of the new administration to ensure swift policy implementation and governmental restructuring. And that's what the NAACP nationally is fighting against. And so our branch unit 7032 came up with this slogan or this idea. We wanted to do it by districts, but we just decided to put together a mini conference, which is Know Your Rights mini conference. Because when we're thinking of all the things that just happened in the 180-day playbook, the policy agenda, the personal database, and the Presidential Administration Academy, right now, I think the world is in shock. I mean, and in a shock far greater than what we had anticipated before. When we think of that, Professor McLaughlin, how does this resonate with you? This Project 2025, not so much, what we're doing, but just what you've seen and witnessed and lived, not just you in your family, over the last few months here in 2025.
Yeah, I'm very concerned. I'm concerned about the most vulnerable in our society, those who are poor, and the different marginalized groups that you talked about before, LGBTQ plus, for those who are ethnic minorities, for those who are immigrants. I mean, Project 2025 is detrimental to the future of our society, and I'm really concerned. So I'm happy that I can be a part of our branch and the initiative that we have moving forward, and the Know Your Rights conference, because I think that's what we need to do as a populace. We need to know what our rights are, what are some of the concerns that are coming up for our communities, and how can we help.
Yes, absolutely. And also, we love to have you on board with this. And this is something that is innovative and creative. But also, when we're thinking back to Project 2025, it says that the goal of 2020, the Project 2025, is to set back decades of civil rights progress for Black America. That's in civil rights, healthcare, education, policy, and incarceration, and even environmental impacts. And so, our upcoming Know Your Rights mini conference that's happening August 23rd at CCBC. Randallstown on Offutt Road, supported by Community College of Baltimore County. Like you said, it is designed to help people understand what their rights are, because people's rights have been violated right now. And Professor McLaughlin, what topic have you decided to take on outside of, education, and why do you feel that particular topic is important in today's climate?
Yes, I did do something a little bit outside of my own expertise. I'm an educator, and that's generally what I steer to. But I decided to work on environmental justice. It is also a passion of mine, particularly issues like food justice, environmental sustainability, those kinds of things. And I think, again, that it's most important for our communities. Everybody wants clean water. Everyone wants green spaces. Everyone wants great health outcomes, and Project 2025 is a detriment to that. Again, we have more of for African Americans and marginalized communities that tend to have higher asthma rates. So you changing up medication or changing up how the health department works, those kinds of things have a detrimental effect to our communities. So yeah, I kind of took on the idea of environmental justice.
Yes, and when you're thinking, as you mentioned, not the environmental rolls over into health, and then health rolls over into education, and
Yes.
all of those variables roll over into economic justice and working and things like that. And so our youth today are experiencing, not just the environmental part, which to them is like, I don't like environment, like I don't like algebra, right? It's not related to me, but in hindsight, it does. And we're thinking of, going green,
Yes.
being environmentally, friendly. I know here in L County, for sure, and I know that, this is something that we recently just started looking at, is that, some funeral homes are trying to create crematoriums in Baltimore County. I just happened to be at a work session maybe 2 weeks ago where, some I think Councilman Wade is trying to put together a bill to create a Department of Agriculture, removing it under the workforce development umbrella, because it's so much that is being maybe not hone in on as it should be in terms of food and health and going into the environment. And when we're thinking about, the air quality, when we're thinking about the greening, we're thinking about food deserts, which, listening to those farmers and, those that they partner with, we should not have food deserts anywhere in the county, right?
That's right.
So when you're thinking about that, and we're thinking about, Project 2025 that's pulling things back, to fight, I'll know your rights. When we're thinking about our youth that are currently caught up in this, what comes to mind in terms of their concerns, but also maybe some solutions, that What do you think?
Yeah, I think part of it is learning about the issue of food justice overall. I recently took a trip with some of my students to different Black farms in Maryland, in DC, and in Virginia. And that experience was so eye-opening for them in terms of seeing where their food actually comes from. What is the systems that are in place? They learned that a lot of the farmers do not use any kind of toxins, but were not able to be classified as organic because of the expense that it takes for the farmers to be classified as organic. So even though you have many farmers that are utilizing practices that are better for our environment, they can't get the quote unquote credit of being organic because of the barriers financially that take place. They also learned that, through Project 2025 and the rollbacks that have been taking place with a lot of the farmers and the subsidies that they get, they're not able to finish any kind of projects. There's one farmer that had a chiller that was able to go further in terms of being able to sell more produce further away, had to stop that project. We had another farmer that was building a community building. It was serving as like a community center for their community, also going to store extra food. They're not able to complete that project. So they learned what the detrimental effects are for this policy in terms of the everyday lives of these farmers. So our young people are very concerned, and they talked about what are ways that we can support in our communities. Why don't we go to our farmers markets and get our food from our local farmers? Why don't we make sure that our communities are sustainable, that we advocate for green space? So our young people are very, very much engaged about this issue of environmental justice and sustainability in our communities.
Yeah, and it's something that you mentioned that was also brought up at the work session, at the county council work session, not this past Monday, but the week prior, that the farmers were talking about. According to, not just the farmers, but even I think Councilman Wade identified the same thing. There is a huge building somewhere here in Baltimore County that is empty, right? Like brand new equipment in there, it's not being utilized. And what the farmer stated is that, exactly what you just said, Baltimore County public school students should be taking field trips to that, that dwelling to understand where the food comes from, right? Yes. And not just where the food should come from, but also let them intern there, right? Let them take tours, let them understand the foundational perspective and like you said, allow them to form their own understanding, because as your students identified, as Councilman Wade identified, as the farmers are saying, when individuals kind of know where the food come from, they start looking at it differently, right? Yes. And a lot of our students right now don't currently like the food that's being given to them during lunch. They wish they had other options, or they'll go straight to a vending machine or stop at 7-Eleven or some candy that's now worsening their teeth. I know that's not a word, but it is today, worsening their teeth. But even having, and not only that part of perspective of where the food come from, but now we're rolling over into economic, right? Economic justice. Now we're rolling over into the health part. Now we're diminishing food desert. Now we're getting our youth involved. And as a parent right now of youth and young adults, how do you feel that your youth and mine, my youngest is 17, and you have children going in, what do you think that we can do differently to help them understand the gravity and the impact of not just 2025, but as it dwindles down to them in their own backyard, in their homes, in their communities?
Absolutely. And I think part of it's getting into our communities and being the solutions that we need to see. One of the things that we do is we go over to Liberty Grace Garden as a community service and help out there. We help out our own church, which is New All Saints Church, Catholic Church, for and to kind of change the narrative. What I've been talking about with my children is the concept of food apartheid as opposed to food desert. And apartheid means that this is man-made. This is not something, a natural phenomena. These are policy choices that are being made within our society to enrich certain sectors and enrich certain people at the expense of others. So even in terms of explaining and talking about the language change, I think it's really important for our young people to be aware of that. So yeah, again, we are the answer. We are our answer. We are the answer. Our communities are the answer. We just need to connect to that. And I think for our children, that's a real struggle, like connecting to community, especially after COVID and the pandemic and being locked down and shut down. A lot of them in terms of being able to relate to others and social skills, it's still a struggle. So having the opportunity to connect to their community and to find out what their neighbors' stories are and what are those challenges, I think that's one of the first steps that we can take to better our community.
And that's why I love everything that you just said, right? Like your background is education. However, education ties into everything else. So even when we're talking about what we're talking about, that's educating not just within your household and then within a community, but then the community is impacting the community, right? So your children, my children and everyone else's children who's getting that eye opener of experience, either through a field trip or through their parents, are taking these and they're being a olive branch to solutions in their community. And it's also helping to shape their views, but not only because your background is in education, just like the NAACP, right? People typically look at the NAACP as a Black organization. It was absolutely founded to protect colored people, but the history helps us show that the NAACP push actually originated with Black and white people, right?
Interracial. Absolutely,
right? And so when we're thinking about this Know Your Rights mini conference, which, by the way, is unique to Randallstown NAACP branch 7032. So if you hear it anywhere else, they stole it from us, but we're the first. But listen, always remain the best. So copying is a benefit. But anyway, our Know Your Rights mini conference in today's climate, not just, what we just covered, from health, environmental, economic justice and our youth and our adults. But, right now, people kind of need to have some type of hope and some type of trust. And obviously, this is not based off of, ticket sales or anything like that. But why do you feel, Professor McLaughlin, why this is so important for people to attend and to get involved? Let's start with the 10 part, because to get involved, that's like a whole nother conversation.
That's the next step. Yes.
Listen, and that step has many steps. So why do you think, not just as a facilitator and a person that's on the ground fighting and getting involved and trying to have some type of balance, why do you feel that this type of initiative from our branch 7032 is important to really focus on the community and to hopefully let them know that we're not just there, but hey, we're coming with some solutions to what our culture is currently going through?
Yes, because I think there aren't enough spaces in our society where these conversations are taking place. So this is an opportunity for us to come together as community and share what we know. We're not saying we have all the answers, but we want to bring our neighbors in. We want to bring our community in to be able to have these conversations and figure out and strategize together what are the best ways that we can move forward. So I definitely encourage anybody who's listening to this to please come out to our conference so we can start these conversations and we can start the movement to take our country back. We want an inclusive society. We want a society that allows everyone to count, to flourish, and to thrive. And the only way we can do that is if we come together as a community. And this is the first step, one of the first steps to do that.
Yes, and I love it. And before I ask you the next question, I do want people to know that, the NAACP, I walked into a bank one day and just here recently, and I shared this with the executive committee, and somebody was like, "Oh, y'all still around?" And that it did. I wasn't offended, but I was just like, I took a breath from it, like
There's still more work to do. We got to get the word out. Yeah.
Yes. And for the work that we're doing, as you mentioned, this is not a means to an end, but it's chomping away, right? It's laying a foundation. It's, building bricks headed to China. And so people that are coming, and we're hoping is everyone, this is not a one that is focused on politics or photo ops or any of the above. This is us, real people, talking to real people about real issues, and not just problems, but strategic solutions that are tangible, that we want someone to walk away that, hey, it's 5 speakers, but Professor McLaughlin spoke to me, Dr. L spoke to me, hey, JP spoke to me, and now these are things that they can walk out and say, now I'm on fire for change. Now I'm on fire to make a difference. Hey, even if I just start within my home and go from there, because that's where it begins. So with that, Professor McLaughlin, as you're thinking about your topic, environmental, which is outside of your scope, and thank you so very much for taking that on. And that was our challenge, right? Like, hey, we got the education conference, eyes closed. But, because the NAACP has such a variety of sub-umbrellas that, that are impactful and people aren't aware, we wanted to meet the community where they are. When you're thinking about your workshop, your presentation, what are some of the highlights and takeaways that people can expect under environmental sustainability and justice?
I'm definitely going to talk about food justice and this idea of getting our produce from people that we know, from our neighbors who are our farmers. I will also be talking about even little things like one of the things we learned from the farmers is that when you buy things like seedless grapes or seedless watermelon, part of what they're trying to do is monopolize the ability to be able to sell those products so that other people cannot. How do you get other products? Through the seeds. So if you sell seedless, so even if it's making the decision, you know what, I'm going to get the seed grapes as opposed to the seedless grapes. I'm going to get the seed. Those little changes that we can make in our everyday life will make a huge difference. I think another issue that I wanted to think about, or I would like to talk a little bit about, is the impact of AI on environment and the detrimental effects that are happening in our communities, particularly those who are marginalized in terms of their socioeconomic status or race. It's having a significant impact on our environment. So those are definitely 2 topics that I'm going to be speaking about. Some of the initiatives through our Maryland General Assembly that are moving forward in terms of trying to, so folks will be aware about those measures, but those are probably the 3 highlights of my presentation.
I already have questions because I am that person that I prefer seedless grapes.
I do too. I do too. But then I learned that and I was like, oh my goodness, look what they're doing.
And not just that, Professor McLaughlin, it's also watermelon.
Watermelon, lemons.
Yes. I literally hate picking the seeds out of grapes.
I get it. I get it.
But I also hear you now saying those seeds, if planted, would then grow your own grapes. So imagine the people, and what in my community, I'm surrounded by other nationalities. They've created gardens and they're growing their things like unapologetically, not within a fence, on the side of the house, right? They've created their garden. And then some are in fence where there are gardens, but let me tell you, I will spend lots of money on grapes and watermelon because they like the watermelon is out of season. It's like January. And I'm like, really? But yes, but I never thought to take those seeds and to grow them. So now maybe I could be selling watermelon.
Yeah.
Mind blown.
Yes. There are so many different things that we can do in our everyday life to begin to shift what's happening in terms of the ecosystem of our food. If we do just 1 or 2 things differently, it would shape the whole, it would make a difference in terms of changing our food ecosystem.
And then the other thing I'm just sitting here thinking, like, if people just walked away with their favorite foods, and if there are seeds involved, you know how much money that could save their household?
Yes.
I mean, I hate, no offense to, the grocery stores, but with what's currently happening because of this playbook 180 and all of the other 4 sections of Project 2025, like, this is real tangible things that people can do. Not saying that you have to go out and buy an acre, but even if you just took a flower bed, a what's named from Joann's that might not be around, or from Walmart, and just drop the seeds in there.
Yeah.
You're growing your own watermelon and grapes. But oh my goodness, I'm thinking, oh my God, imagine if we open our own community. Calm down, Takima. Calm down.
But that's the thinking. That is the opportunity for us to have these conversations, to talk about ways in which we can use our communities, the land on our communities, to make a different kind of food ecosystem for our society. Yeah.
And then you talking about AI. And listen,
Yes.
Someone called my business today, and my AI rep answered. And I have it there. One, obviously, I felt like I was behind the times. So finally, I have an AI answering. And so they transferred over. So they was like, they're calling me, an agency is like, they're calling me from their business. I said, well, my AI transferred the number. I wouldn't even know what it is, even so. And she was like, was that an AI that answered? And I said, yeah, that's kind of my filter. And she was like, when did this start? And I was like, ma'am, I'm late to the AI game. I said, I just got hit here this summer. And she said, well, if you're behind, then I'm back in like 1950. Because she was like, and AI actually answered, responded, transferred the call. And I said, yeah, it kind of filters out those people that are not serious. So if you can't get past the AI, you can't even get to me. But her mind was blown. But when we're talking about this whole food thing and environmental justice and AI, remember when they used to tell us prior to Y2K, like, when January 1st, 20,000 come in, the world is gonna implode.
Your credit cards are gonna be able to be wiped out. Yeah, all that they said.
Right. And so we woke up the next day not knowing if we were gonna be like in existence, right? And then we started hearing about this AI stuff like a few years ago. Yep. And then the movie with Will Smith, iRobot, came out, and then Tom Cruise, and then the Jetsons. Let's even go be even before iRobot, Jetsons, right? But here we are in this AI age that is very relevant, and sooner or later it's going to take over industries.
It is part of our society now.
Yes.
And we've got to learn how to manage that.
Yes.
And one of the things I've been thinking a lot about, convenience, there's a cost to convenience.
Right.
And for us, in terms of the AI, there's an environmental cost in terms of what it does to other communities that are neighboring a lot of these data centers that store that information. So it's definitely something. And I got a shout out to Dr. Heber Brown for his article in the Baltimore Beat that really got me thinking about this idea of AI and environmental justice.
Yeah, and even when we go back to the food thing, we're trying to, when we're thinking about health and the diseases that plague African Americans and Caucasians, processed food, going back to the originator, right? And eventually, if people don't get on board with saving the seeds and understand where it's coming from and the impact of not food deserts or apartheid, but the changing how we can play a part, one person, one seed, one vegetable, one fruit, maybe not meat, because I'm not big on the meat already, but let's keep the meat out of it. Then AI will be processing everything. And as we wind down, I remember seeing this movie recently, and I can't think of it, the name of it, but they were taking all of the leftovers and putting it in this one big pot, and it was churning, and it was like spitting out bars that was considered to be food, and people were eating it until they realized what was in the food, right? And we hear that now when we're hearing about turkey or beef,
sausage, right?
And that was before AI. So I absolutely, if people, like you said, people that are listening, catching up on it, August 23rd, from 10 a.m. to I think 3 p.m. I could be 4 p.m. I could be wrong. 36 something Offutt Road. Just type up Randallstown CCBC Extension Center. And what I love about the location, let's just stop there for a second because I know we got to wrap up. The Randallstown CCB Extension Center, when we're thinking about a hub of resources, it is, I mean, their director is phenomenal, but CCBC is the only JUCO I know, and I only live in, I'm only between two, that have 6 campuses throughout one county. Mm-hmm. There is no reason why people cannot walk into their local CCBC and not feel overwhelmed. But the fact that we chose there is because it's in the center of a community that does not access it enough. Would you agree?
I would absolutely agree with that. Yes.
And so we're hoping people will come out and not just to our mini conference, but to see all of the great opportunities from workforce
development. Absolutely.
Yes. Go ahead, run it down, Professor McLaughlin.
Yes.
What does CCBC offer? Go ahead.
Workforce development opportunities. They have computers there that people can go look for jobs. They have all types of trainings and workshops. So there's lots of things for folks to engage in at our Randallstown Extension Center. And as you said, the larger CCBC community, which has several locations throughout Baltimore County.
Yes, and I know we have to wind down because I know you have to go, but this is the start of the conversation. So I decided to do this Know Your Rights mini conference tour with the facilitators because we want to get you excited about the basic things, not politics, not taking pictures, none of that. But we are real people fighting a real fight on the ground in the front. It is hard. But we want to let you know the community, the leaders, the olive branch organizations that we are here, Randallstown NAACP 7032, as a unit that we're trying as best we can to ensure that people know not just what their rights are, but tangible solutions that they can now gravitate towards and make it their own. And in parting words, Professor McLaughlin, what would you like to say for those that are on the fence, don't know, going through stuff? What you want to end with?
I would say just do it. Like we can only make change if we engage. So that is the only way we're going to have to change. We're going to get change, and we need to do it together. I think part of the issue is people feel like on their own they can't do something. Well, you might not be good at, let's say, math, but I am. I might not be creative, but you are. Whatever it is, we can do it together as a community. So I encourage you to come out, meet your neighbors, know your neighbors, so we can figure this out together.
Yes, and absolutely, I would be without remiss with saying get your NAACP membership. It is $30 annually for adults and $10 annually for youth. So please register your youth and register your adults. And on that note, Professor McLaughlin, thank you so very much for being available, making yourself available, fighting a good fight on the front line, behind, being as a mom, a wife, a community leader, an advocate. And is anybody else tired listening from a small portion of what she has to offer? And, that's what it's about. We're all overwhelmed. We're all stretched thin, but at some point, if that executive order is signed, your job can be taken away, right? Your resources can be removed, but it doesn't mean that you stop living. As long as God wakes you up in the morning, that means your fight is not over. And we are here to say, as a collective, as individuals, as women, men, children, that we're here to fight alongside everyone that's listened to the sound of our voices, heard the interview, and that will show up on August 23rd in person, not Memorex. That we're here for you. And so, Professor McLaughlin, thank you so very much for being here. I know you got to tap out for a second. And this is Dr. Takima Dorsey. I am going to hold on, Professor McLaughlin. Thank you for tuning in for another exciting episode of DTD's Urban Multisport Radio podcast show. Again, share it with a friend. Some information will be in in the write-up. If you have a topic that you want to hear more about, drop it in the link below. But until then, have a great day, and I look forward to chatting with you